Mayor, we do have a quorum.
Thank you, sir. All right, I'm just waiting for 6 and we will go. And good evening, everyone. I want to welcome everyone. I'm glad everyone is here to participate, and welcome everyone to our virtual workshop for the Town of Windermere, February 28th, 2023. The time is 6 p.m. We do have a quorum, and with that, we will begin with our pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, I want to thank everyone for participating tonight. We're going to go over just briefly a little bit about the kind of the schedule that we want to operate on this evening to make sure that we have both presentations as well as opportunity to receive input from the public. Get any questions answered we have either from our staff or the applicant, and then leave time for some council discussion at the end of the meeting. I'm going to let Robert go over that schedule and do our decorum.
Yes, sir. As far as decorum, we're going to keep everybody muted until it is time to open it up for public comment. We are going to start off with Brad Cornelius with Waitrim, that is the town's planner, then open up some questions from the town council to our town planner. Then we'll open up to the applicants to do a presentation if they so desire, and then questions of the applicant at that time from town council. Then we'll open it up for public comment. You would just raise your hand icon or type your question in the chat box, and we'll see if we can have it answered. And then we'll begin the town council discussion.
Probably be better to do it now.
I would ask that everybody that is not a presenter or town council member, please be muted.
All right.
Started, yeah.
All right, sounds good. Thank you, Robert, for that. And with that, we will go ahead and kick the meeting off with our town planner, Brad Cornelius.
Hi, sorry about that. Thank you, Mayor. Again, this is Brad Cornelius with Waitrim, serving as your contracted town planner. And as y'all are aware, this is your 4th workshop related to the proposed downtown Windermere Properties development project. This is an outgrowth of your last workshop you had at the end of January. So Robert, next please. And I'm not going to have a very long presentation. I'm going to hit some highlights and about the, what we're discussing today. So if there are other questions that I don't address, please ask me, when I'm done. Just a very quick reminder, everybody knows this is at the northeast corner of Main Street and 6th Avenue. It's about 2.17 acres, and the Downtown Windermere Properties LLC is the property owner. Next, please. So, just so everybody does remember, this is the downtown master plan, or the town center master plan that was adopted by the town several years ago, but it is still in effect. It's adopted in your comprehensive plan as well within your land development code. And the blue circle there does show the area where this project is. And you see it is designated for development under this master plan, with the front portion along Main Street, the building zone, the rear portion along Oakdale, the parking area. So that is the master plan that oversees or guides this project moving forward. Next, please. So as you all may recall, at the end of the 3rd workshop, there was a request by town council for more information, much more detailed information to be submitted for this request. Again, as a reminder, this is a workshop. We're not at the public hearings yet. So what was submitted in response to the town council's request by the applicant, CV3 and Kimley Horn, is what I have on the list and what was in your agenda packet. We have, I will call them the full civil engineering plans. They're not 100%, but they're very close to being fully completed. We have the drainage report. We have the potable water report. We have a geotechnical report. We have updated tree mitigation plan and a new arborist letter dated February 13th. We have more building renderings and elevations. We have a 3D rendering of the project. And then they didn't provide updated renderings of the Oakdale buffer wall or any of the buffers, the wall or the landscaping. They did submit the same rendering they had at the January workshop for the Oakdale buffer wall and landscape. So that did not change from what you saw. They did not submit though any other buffer renderings for this evening. Next, please. So where we are right now in the process outside of the workshops, I'll say, is because we do have the civil engineering, the full set submitted, we have begun what we'll call our first, first review on the technical side of the review. So that has begun. We're not completed yet, but I can say that what we've looked at this point, and these are the technical pieces, and really what I would say is things that are underground primarily, is what this does look at, is at this point, we haven't found any significant technical design issues or concerns with the review to this point. But again, like I said, we're still going through the review and it's not complete. But I do want, to say that in terms of that, so far everything looks okay. But again, these are the technical issues, not necessarily the issues that will be discussed this evening and those other issues. We also did send this to Fire Chief Sean Sorensen with the Coe Fire, who serves as the town's fire chief and fire marshal. He did review these plans that you have before you this evening. And we did get a response from him yesterday that he had no concerns with the plans. His only recommendation or his only comment was that they coordinate the relocation of a fire hydrant with him when that time comes. So we did have the review by fire and they did not have any objections to what they reviewed, which is the same plans that you see this evening. Next, please. One of the items that came up earlier today, and you'll see in my agenda memo, I had 2 comments in there related to permitting with the Southwest Florida Water Management District, as well as the 5th Avenue driveway. I did get an email from Mr. Geiger, the engineer of record from Kinley Horn for the applicant. And he did clarify that in terms of the Water Management District permitting and the environmental resource permitting, they have or will have filed for an exemption under what's called the 210 rule, which means the 10-2 rule, which means the project is less than 10 acres in size and there's less than 2 acres in impervious. I apologize for my typo here. So the project size is 2.17 acres, so it's under the 10. And based on their plans, they're at just slightly over 1 acre in impervious. So they will or they have submitted that. And when they get that, they will submit that to the town, that exemption. However, the important thing to remember about this, though, even though they have the exemption, or they may get the exemption, they still have to meet not only the town's criteria for the stormwater, but they still have to meet the South Florida Water Management District and DEP criteria for stormwater management. In the email from Mr. Geiger, he does acknowledge that they will meet or exceed those standards. So that is an update from what was in my memo to information I received today. The other update I received earlier today was related to the 5th Street, 5th Avenue driveway connection. As you all may recall, at the last workshop, Mr. Fitzgibbons for the town had made a recommendation to help with the truck movement out of that driveway, was to revise the curb there as it comes out. Mr. Geiger did point out that they did make that revision. I show it here on the slide. The top picture you see is what was in the plans that was before you at the last meeting in January, and what's at the bottom is the change. In simple terms, what happened, they pulled, Mr. Geiger pulled the curbing back and then also put in a crosswalk in that area. So that was the response, which I do believe was generally consistent with what Mr. Fitzgibbons was asking. And I did have the opportunity to speak with him earlier today about that. So that is an update to the memo. Next, please. So now I'm going to hit on some of the big topics and issues I know that are out there about this project, just to make sure all the information that's needed to make a decision is clear to everyone. So for this project, because it's in your town center district, which has its own set of parking regulations outside of the standard parking regulations that the town has, and which are adopted in your land development code, what the requirements are, the set standard is 4 spaces per 1,000 gross square feet for all land use types. So there's not a differential between land use types. It's 4 spaces per 1,000 gross square feet. So currently the proposed building is at 19,575 gross square feet, or the project is, and that would equate to 79 parking spaces based on that standard. There is a second provision in the land development code and in your town center standards that also provides the opportunity for the town council to consider reducing that requirement from 4 to 3.5 spaces per 1,000 gross square feet for all land uses. And that determination that the Development Review Board and the town council would need to make is that, you know, this is appropriate based on the protection of existing mature trees on the site. So it's related to, you know, protection of the existing tree canopy. So with that calculation of 3.5 per 1,000, that then comes to 69 spaces under your codes. And then there's a third provision in your land development code that does provide the council the opportunity, but not the obligation or requirement, to allow for a payment in lieu of providing the parking to provide for improved other parking areas within the downtown area. But the primary two truly are A and B. It's the 4 per 1,000 or the 3.5 per 1,000 gross square feet. So that's what your codes require and state. Next, please. What they're proposing, and this hasn't changed from what you saw last month, on their current site plan, they are proposing 69 parking spaces. So they do meet the requirement of 3.5 spaces per 1,000 square feet. So that is how they've established their parking, and that's what they're asking for the town council to approve. If just as information, if the standard is maintained at 4 spaces per 1,000 square feet and keeping the existing 69 proposed parking spaces, that then results in a maximum allowed gross floor area, I apologize for those typos in there, of 17,250 square feet. So it's a reduction of about 2,300 square feet from where they are today. So if they maintain the 4, and if the 4 is maintained as a requirement and they maintain the 69, that would be the reduction required to be consistent with that standard. Next, please. The next item I'm going to touch on, but I am going to leave this to the applicant to give a lot more detail to this. What's in your packet? You have that tree mitigation plan. You have an accounting of the trees being removed and being preserved on the site. And you also have a letter from the arborist, Eric Hoyer, that provides more information about the different tree items and topics that have come up over the last few months in these hearings. And I will not address those specifically because those are beyond my expertise, and allow the applicant and their arborist to address that. But when I look at it and do the accounting, what it appears is that they are removing 25 native trees from the property. They are removing 27. Well, when I say property, it does include areas within the right-of-way that these are impacted by the required right turn lane, or maybe in the area of the wall and the buffer area that they're putting. So there's 25 native being removed, 27 invasive, and then of the trees remaining, 38 trees are remaining. Of that 38, 17 of them are actually within the boundaries of the project, so within the property lines. However, the other trees are then on the perimeter around the perimeter of the property. But those are the trees that are remaining. And again, there's more information in the arborist letter that I'll allow the arborists to address those concerns at their time. Next, please. Buffering, also a big discussion with this project. So what the town center guidelines require for the buffering, and that's what I have the little excerpt there you see of the image, is it requires the 20-foot buffer along Oakdale Street and along 6th Avenue, a landscape buffer. It also requires within that buffer a 6-foot high screen wall with landscaping on the outside of the wall. So that is what is required under your town center guide requirements, is the 20-foot buffer with the 6-foot high screen wall along Oakdale and 6th Avenue. Next, please. This is their plan that you have with your agenda item of their landscaping which does show the buffer area. They are providing the required 20-foot buffer as required, and that hasn't been really an issue with these last couple plans that we've had. So they do meet that requirement. They do show the 6-foot wall along Oakdale. They do include that. However, these plans do still show a 3-foot wall on 6th Avenue. As I did state just previously, the land development, your town center guidelines do require the 6-foot on East 6th Avenue, and I have had, speaking with residents on that side of Oakdale across from 6th, I do know they do want that 6-foot wall to be maintained along 6th Avenue. So I did want to have that. The little image that's there at the corner that Robert was pointing to, that was the rendering that they submitted in their January public workshop for the view from Oakdale looking south into the property. And that's what they had provided. But we do have the plan, and actually in the full plan set, it does have a listing of all the different plant materials that would go into that buffer area. So that is the buffer. Next, please. The other issue I wanted to touch on with everybody has been quite a bit of discussion, is the proximity of the building at the corner of Main and 6th to the roadway. Another point in your town center design requirements, it has what's called a build-to line, which is a different way to look at setbacks. And basically the build-to line says this is where you have to put the building. You have to build it to that line to bring it up to the sidewalk, to have that, maintain that storefront, you know, along Main Street and maintain that atmosphere. So that's why this building is pushed where it is, to be consistent with that requirement of your master plan. I did look at the distance again, as we discussed at your last workshop, and when I measured it more closely this time, the corner of the building to what I would call the travel way, not the right of way, but the travel way of the roundabout that's in that proximity, would be about 16 feet, 16 and a half feet. So it's not right on top. Again, I'll let the applicant's engineer address issues about site issues and things of that nature, but that is the location. I will say it is consistent though with the intent that you show in your master plan, and it's also consistent with a kind of a downtown atmosphere where you have low speed traffic and things like that. So that is some more information about the location of the building, just so that is out there for everybody's information. Next, please, Robert. So those are the big items. So the next big, I think, important part to explain, so again, everybody understands the process, is we're at the 4th workshop. If, and I will say if this is the last town council workshop, what would happen next? What would happen next is then we would go through, town staff, we would go through the full technical review of the 100% engineering plans for construction. So we would do the full review, the full technical review of the plans. And at the same time, this also requires the preparation of a development agreement. As y'all may recall, there's an agreement related to transportation mitigation, dealing with utilities, a few. So those agreements will also be drafted within that period. Once all that is complete, once the review is complete, once all the agreements are complete from the staff side, what will then happen is then there will be public hearings will then begin. And the first step will be is the noticing of these public hearings. So this will be noticed when they're ready to go to the public hearings, to both the Development Review Board and the Town Council. The noticing will include letters to properties within 500 feet of the boundary of this project. There will be a sign posted on the property. The town, of course, will have it posted on the website, and there will also be a newspaper ad. So we will do our best to get as much notice out there. But as always, never hesitate to reach out to myself if you ever have a question about where this is in the process. And I'm more than happy to speak with anyone. So that would be the next step. Once the noticing is done and the dates are set for the hearings, the first hearing will be the Development Review Board. What will be presented to the Development Review Board, in addition to the staff review and recommendation review of the project, but also the tree board's official recommendation will be submitted to the Development Review Board as part of that hearing. Under the agreement or under the ordinance for this PUD, the tree board was charged with reviewing and providing the recommendation related to tree mitigation and protection, related to the project landscaping, and related to the buffer wall and the buffer landscaping. So those are the pieces under the ordinance that was approved for this PUD that the tree board would be providing their final recommendation through the hearing. The Development Review Board will then do their public hearing and make a recommendation to whatever they feel is the correct recommendation based on the testimony that they hear and their evaluation of it. And then the Development Review Board will then make a recommendation for this project to the Town Council. When it comes to the Town Council, there will be 2 public hearings for this. And so through those 2 public hearings, at the end of that second public hearing, and if the Town Council approves this, if it gets approved, what that is here in the Town of Windermere, that would be the approval for the final development plan and what's also called a major development. And then they would be able to have construction permits issued to begin site development, consistent with all the plans and requirements and conditions that may be adopted or approved by the Town Council if this does get approved. The other very important note I want to make here about this is any conditions or any requirements for this project, if this were to be approved, they run with the land. They will stay in place. I know there's been some questions about, well, what happens if this property is sold after this gets approved? The new owners, if that were to occur, would have to meet all the requirements, all the conditions, everything that's been approved by the Town Council. The only way it could be changed, it would have to come back through the process and back through the hearing and back through the public hearings. So they do run with the property. They do not go away just because the property sells. The one last item I do want to touch on, and I don't have it in my PowerPoint. I know there's been discussion on and off about outdoor display of merchandise. And I do want to make it just very clear for everyone. As you all know, your town code does not allow the businesses to just have daily outdoor display of their merchandise that they sell. You do allow it during special events, and there are criteria for when it is allowed. This project, this proposed project, would have those same limitations. And actually within the plan development ordinance that Town Council adopted for the preliminary plan, there's a condition in there that states that. that this project is subject to the same restrictions on outdoor displays of merchandise as every other business is in the town of Windermere. So I do want to just make that clear so that people do understand that. With that, that is my brief presentation of about, I think, and I'd be happy to try to answer any questions you all have.
Thank you for that, Brad, and thank you for not only your presentation, but your very detailed notes that you included in the agenda packet. For anyone who has not seen those are very helpful and provide a lot of information as well. At this point, council, I want to make sure that we have the opportunity to have any questions that we may have addressed by Brad. If you just want to raise your hand, council, if you have any questions. I'm sorry, I can't see all of you at once. I see Mandy. I see, usually you guys are on the front page, but somehow they're all interspersed. All right.
I don't see any hands raised at this time.
Okay.
Mayor.
All right. Well, that's good.
I actually have Councilmember David.
I see Councilmember Davitt with a question. Go ahead, Councilmember Davitt.
Just a couple quick questions, Brad. I'm not sure that you've looked at that, but the parking is following the standard 12-foot parking space designation.
It does meet the minimum requirement within, yes, sir, within your code for the size of the parking spaces.
Okay, and then
and the handicap space does meet the minimum 12-foot width requirement, yes, sir.
And then the loading area, it can't be a dual use area, parking and loading. It has to be a designated loading area.
Right, and they have a designated loading area within their project.
See that, and the reason I ask is because I mean you can get 8 to 10 additional parking spots there.
Right.
Bring that overall amount up if it was a dual use area.
Right.
Okay, that's all I had. Thank you, Brad.
Thank you, sir.
Brad, can you address just a little bit more detail about the truck egress? Is that follows the same pattern as was in last month's presentation, but we have increased the radius as the truck leaves, correct? Is that
right?
accurate? Right.
And Robert's showing the page there, and I will let the engineer give more detail on it. But from the non-engineer, the change that they made and why I missed it, because I looked on the other side, was here on this east side of the exit coming out onto 5th. And so the change was this curb used to come more out this way, kind of was more out into that travel way. And what they did is they changed the radius or the way that curb comes around, and which drew it back, which gave more room for a truck to exit out and swinging out this way and around. So that was the change that they did. And that was something at your last workshop that Mr. Fitzgibbons had brought up as an idea to help address the movement of truck traffic out of the project onto 5th Avenue. And what they also added that they didn't have before, they also included a crosswalk here across that driveway as well. So that's what was the change. So they didn't change anything in terms of the right of way on 5th Avenue once you come out of what I'll call the throat of the driveway there. Nothing changes out there. The change happens back here where it connects.
How does the truck, is the truck coming in off of 6th the way we had visualized before?
Primarily, I mean, yeah, the main movement, because they would come in off of 6th and come through and out through 5th, and that's how they have it shown modeled. This 5th Avenue side, though, it's not necessarily, it's not a restricted one way in, one way out type of movement. The size of a truck that could come the other way, I don't think would be very large. And I would leave that to the engineer to answer, but I think the primary movement would be from 6th going across and out to 5th. They did model this at a large tractor trailer sized truck. It's not a small truck that is modeled here. So that is what I would call the worst case scenario in terms of the truck sizes that could come through, potentially come through within it. And we did get the verification from the fire review that Chief Sorensen was not concerned with his ability of his fire trucks to access and leave the site as proposed.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Mandy, did I see you with your hand up?
I did, but you asked my question, so I'm good.
Oh, wow. Stole it. Sorry about that. All right. If there's no additional questions from council, then we will move on to the applicant's presentation at this time.
Thank you.
All right, this is Trey Vick. Are you able to hear me?
We can, Trey. Thank you.
Great. Good evening. I appreciate you guys' time on this fourth workshop. I know virtual is always a little challenging to be able to get all the messages across and collaborate the way we want, but hopefully we can do that tonight. And appreciate everybody's time. So what I wanted to do, I know this project has been discussed extensively. There's a lot of base knowledge about it. So I thought I'd sort of pause for a minute and just kind of take a step back from where kind of this started and how we got here, and just to maybe shed some light for maybe those that aren't aware, and then also let you know on our team side with V3 Capital, we have Brett Dargis on the line and Keith Silverman, and then myself, and then we also have our arborist on the call as well. Eric, we have our architect Raheem, and our engineer Marcus, which I know you guys have heard from in the past, but I did want you to know that they're on and available for questions. So we hope we can kind of convey whatever information's left for us to move to DRB. So to just provide like a 5-minute pass on this project, we got involved in early 22, January of 22, but the project dates from significantly farther back. Our partners, Jim Gissy and Jim Carr, lifetime or nearly lifetime residents of Windermere, are the owners of this project, and their families bought it over 10 years ago, and actually started this PUD process back in 2019, April of 2019, where they began pre-apping and talking about what this project could look like into the future. And then in June of 21, so fast forward about 2 years and 2 months through a lot of public comment, a lot of workshops on their behalf, a lot of work with town staff and council members, they did get an ordinance passed, which is the PUD that we're talking about today, and that we're doing this workshop, which that was a requirement within the PUD, in hopes that kind of establishing a rule book or a playbook, so to speak, for how this project could be developed in the future. Still requiring approvals from town council, which Brad laid out, in which we're more than happy to proceed through. Our involvement came, like I said, in 2022, predominantly focused on our desire to help Jim Carr and Jim Gissy get this project built. We've known them a long time, and in our background in development and experience with them and other projects like this made sense. I know you've heard mostly from Brett Dargis on our team. I'm the CEO of V3, and I just wanted to personally talk through this. So to hit kind of Brad's points, the biggest challenges I think that we have on this site, trees, obviously, making sure that the development maintains the integrity of as many trees as possible. The parking has been a hot button, which we can talk through. Access, also a hot button, and buffering. So if I just start on the tree side, because I would say that's probably in the PUD and in our meetings, it's been a big point. We've spent a lot of time, specifically Brett and Keith on our team, with the tree board and through these workshops and our arborists, through physical walkthroughs on site, and everything that we can do to collaborate to save as many trees as possible. There's a lot of beautiful trees on that piece. I think when it originally went through in 2021, when that PUD was approved, the original thought was there was maximized density, save trees in the right of way. And so the removal of trees was substantial. But through this collaboration over the course of the last, I'd say 3 years, we've gotten it to where we're saving 38 trees. one really great tree that we've basically built these buildings around, which is in the courtyard, that will provide, a nice tree canopy in that area, as well as a main tree along Main Street. And then you'll notice the round circle in our parking field, which is a stand of two large trees that we're actually going to have as an area that people could sit under. It's unpaved and available for folks. So I think that's a big step and a big improvement that through collaboration has come. When we talk about trees, we back in October through one of our workshops, an email was sent out by the tree board with 16 points. And these 16 points were the recommendations of what the tree board would need to see or want to see to put a recommendation to proceed. And so of the 16, we were able to accommodate 14 of them. One of them actually Brad referenced today, which was the buffering setback area, which is actually per code. And so unfortunately on that, it was a request to expand that buffer area. We don't have control over code, so that was not something that we could change. And then the last one that we couldn't do, the second one, which was number 14 on that list, was to save a specific laurel oak. It's tree number 53. We could talk through if we need to. And that's a tree that sits in the middle of a drain field. And if you look at development feasibility, just not a tree that was feasible to be saved. But I think we can show a really strong effort on behalf of the whole development team and the city to move the needle substantially on trees. So next on parking, this original project with its max density and saving no trees did have a parking concept plan of 88 parking spaces at 21,000 square feet and a potential for a multi-story building. That's been scaled back from a development size. We're down to just over 19,000 square feet now. We've brought the scope of the building back down to 1 story as we felt 2 stories works. We're next to a 2-story building, as you can see in a rendering that we had prepared with an adjacent building. But we just felt the character of that felt good for what we're trying to build at 6th and Main and Windermere. Doing that and saving the amount of trees, these 38 trees we talk about, has reduced our parking to 69 parking spaces, as Brad mentioned, just over 3.5. If you look at that original PUD that was approved, I think this was a concept that all along was known, that getting to 4 per thousand in a focus of being conscious of the tree canopies was going to be a large challenge. And in that PUD, it provides for that opportunity to be less than 4 per thousand. And then it creates a space to I'll call it a fee for parking, so to speak, of public parking spaces around that's to be set in the future. So that's a concept that I don't think we created new in this conversation. I think we're just trying to get everybody comfortable and on the same page. But that was a concept that's been around since this was approved in 21. And we believe personally with the uses that we're talking about with, we do have a boutique Ace Hardware that's going in there that was mentioned in that 7,000-foot building, and have a lot of really nice interest from existing tenants that are there, as well as several new tenants that will be coming in. We feel comfortable, and the tenants feel comfortable on the parking side, that it's practical and usable and will operate well. And so to the extent we could create more parking, but we believe it would impact the trees. And I don't think that would serve the interest of the tree board and the town of what they were trying to accomplish. So we'll have more dialogue on that, I'm sure, but I just want to point that piece of it out. The access and kind of to the point of comments that come out of these workshops, Mr. Fitzgibbons that had the comment on access, we were able to adjust that. And that was a good comment. I think that freed up some access and allowed trucks to get in and out better. You talk about buffering is probably the next one that I heard us talk about. On the wall size, I know that's been a point of contention. And I want to be on record to say, we will build a wall that's 6 feet tall, 3 feet tall, 4 feet tall, whatever makes the most sense for the project and for what council would like to see done. personally, I think a little shorter wall might aesthetically be a little more pleasing to the project, but I understand the concerns about headlights and things. So if that makes it a 6-foot wall, I want to be here to tell you we're going to build that, and that's what code says. So we're not trying to pull a fast one by showing a 3-foot wall rendering. We're just trying to show you guys what it could look like, and we do have a long road of public approvals that are going to come even once these workshops are concluded. So I think the last thing I'd say is today is not the final conversation. Today is the kind of final workshop for us to be able to then move into the public comment and voting on what this will or will not be. I mean, our goal is to build a great project for the town. Our goal is also to be a good steward of the partnership that owns this land and their resources that they've invested in this. And I think that they deserve an opportunity to know by a public vote of what they can and can't do according to the town of Windermere. And that's what we're here to do. So, I just wanted to share that. Sorry for being a little long-winded, but I thought those were kind of important points to throw out. And I assume we'll open to comment. Marcus, Eric, Raheem, Brett, Keith, anything that I didn't say that you'd like to add that would be relevant now. And then obviously I'm sure there'll be some back and forth dialogue amongst our team as questions and comments come up. But if you guys have anything else, I don't want to not give you an opportunity to speak.
Trey, I did receive after 5 o'clock a bunch of slides from your team. So if they're willing to share those at this time, I'll be more than happy to allow the share to Kevin.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, really.
Walk you through.
Or sorry,
Yeah.
Keith. I'm sorry, Keith.
Hey, no problem. I'd like, there's some good pictures in there. I did work on getting an illustration of a 3-foot and a 6-foot wall sort of next to each other so that the town council and the public can see the difference and see what they kind of like. I know there's been discourse on that. So I do have a rendering on that.
All right, you ready to go?
Go ahead and share them if you want. I can just talk through it real quick.
So let me get to, so this is probably the best way to see it.
Yeah, and so this is exactly what I was just mentioning on an opportunity to do a 3-foot or 6-foot wall or somewhere in between. For those of you that are on the phone or have done renderings before, renderings are just that. It's a rendering. It's somewhat of an inexact science. And frankly, you guys would never let us build to a rendering. You're going to make us build to the plans that you approve and permit. So when we're doing these, just to address it, like our goal is to provide the closest illustration as possible. Given the nature of a rendering, it is not possible to render something to the exact finite detail of how it will be constructed. And especially when you talk about backgrounds and things like that, our goal here is to focus attention on the points we're trying to illustrate. It's next to impossible to overlay an entire cityscape onto a rendering. So I know there's been some commentary on that. I just want to address it because I don't want people to feel like we're sliding a piece of this rendering that they would want to see on it. But when we build these, it's a time-consuming process our architects go through to do, but also it's to illustrate that point. So this is that 3-foot, 6-foot wall comparison that we're trying to show as some options. And again, I don't think today we're going to make that decision. It'll be through comments and DRB, but I want to be again on record to tell you that we're on board to build what the town will is. So I don't think it'll be a point of contention, but again, just an illustration. You did see the rendering that I think we provided in that presentation of the side-by-side building. That was the cover page there. And so that gives you a little bit idea of size and scope, which, obviously we're a little bit smaller building height than our neighbor. And then Keith, anything else that was in that slideshow that we wanted to make sure we go through? I know you have a few others in there, but I think a lot of them were shown by the presentation that was put out. So I think that's probably the extent of what in that PDF would be relevant to this conversation.
Yes, sir. I agree.
All right, Mayor, I guess they're opening the floor up to town council question.
Yeah, so if there's no additional information from the applicant at this time, we will allow council to have Q&A with the applicant. Mandy?
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, so I understand about the rendering. So because looking at the building, it's not the feel of Windermere. So you're saying this is just an idea of what it's going to look like, but for the sake of the town, it will match the look and the vintage type of Windermere. Is that correct? Am I hearing that correctly?
Yeah. So there's an approval process for our building plans and all that we have to go through, and that's certainly going to be followed. I mean, we haven't even done our final building plans yet. You've got pretty much final civils, so drainage and parking and site work stuff. But from a full building, yes, that's not completed and done yet. But this is representative of the style that we're working towards. With
this is Brett Dargis. We've been given design standards for architectural that we'll be following quite closely.
So, Mandy, did you get your question answered? I want to make sure.
Thank you, sir.
And I appreciate that. So I'll follow through on that as well. And I believe, and I know, okay, so I know with the design standards, there are certain elements. I was just saying it's design standards can be good and bad, right? I mean, they can save you from something hideous, but sometimes they get in the way of amazing, right? So I think that some of the feedback that I've heard is that perhaps we would definitely like to see if we could utilize some more of those design standards in terms of the fascias and different looks that can be built into this. Not to, I'm not an architect, not to get overly, I don't want to see us use every one, but maybe if we could break it up a little bit and make it just a little bit more interesting as well. I do think potentially within those guidelines and standards, hopefully there's some options for that.
Yeah, and I think Brett's point is the right one. We're gonna conform to y'all's town standard. We're not gonna come up with something that's totally out of character. I mean, look, this is a substantial investment of capital to build.
Sure.
So our focus is very aligned with the town. I mean, our focus is to build a very aesthetically pleasing, beautiful destination for people to come in the town of Windermere, and frankly, from a lot of the folks that live in the town to have a great spot to go. So we will do everything in our power to make this a beautiful project, and as much feedback as we can get through the building plan process. We're open to suggestions and ideas. But we'll conform to your standards without
the biggest thing, Brad, is that, as you know, we have a 20-foot building center elevation change requirement on both elevations. So those will be met. And it's reflected here somewhat, but it's actually, it shows better on the actual architectural elevations that we've done. But, it's to give it that small town feel that we're striving for.
Okay. I appreciate the feedback. Also, so to go back to the parking lot barrier wall, and I know that you guys will build any height that we eventually settle on, but do the renderings, not to be built to the renderings, but do the renderings show us the column and then block design that is the intent?
The elevation design right now should conform to what's going to be set in place. It's going to be a panelized system. So the columns will be set on small foundations in order to not disturb as much ground as we need to.
Sure.
And then the panels will be slid in and held in place like that. So, and we can make those panels, you can make those panels any size you want.
Can make them any size, and can they be any any material or any or texturized? Or how does that work?
They're typically poured concrete slabs that are brought in. You know, they'll be set up, and we're going to use a skid steer. We confirm that we don't need a crane on the property to set them. So probably 2 skid steers would be able to pick up an 8-foot to a 10-foot panel and slide it into place. And then just mortared to the columns.
And just to kind of to your point, there's lots of texture options. There's lots of optionality to those. So don't think a poured concrete slab necessarily from an architectural style. I mean, it'll be a uniform look as all those segmented walls are. But there's lots of finish options. And so, you know, I think we're showing you it's going to be a segmental wall, and that's what we're going to do. And that's what we're rendering to show heights. But final design, finish, and architecture is going to be something that's going to be in conformance with the architectural style of the whole project. Sure. So that's definitely a yet to come finish level.
Yeah, right.
But the style won't change to Brett's points.
Understand. And a lot of these, and I appreciate the answers. A lot of these questions are things that we hear from residents. So I want to, whenever I get the opportunity to kind of get those answered ahead of time, I want to make sure that we take those opportunities. I see Councilperson Williams with his hand up.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor. Two quick things. This wall just for people looking around, the Lake Down Preserve wall is built this way with the small footers and the posts, and they slid in the panels. So I've seen it done, and it works out really nice, and they can really tweak it, and it's easy to put up. My question though, Mr. Vick, you said something in your last comments about the parking about a feet apart. What did you mean by that?
So if you look at the PUD ordinance that was passed, and I actually could pull it up here in a minute, but there is a section in it, and hold on, I have it in front of me. Let me reference the section. There is a section in it that references an opportunity in that ordinance to, in the event that parking is not met to a 4 per thousand standard. Hold on, I'm talking and flipping, and I think it's on page 3.
I think he's talking about the mitigation portion.
Okay, I caught it exactly. I caught it as private parking and charging.
No.
In town, we'll go over like 11.
Yeah, no, trust me. There's no pay to park here. It's on section 2.3 of the PUD.
I know all about the mitigation end of it. So
yeah, that's all I was referencing.
It was just the way it was phrased, and I was like, okay, because I know I'm going to get emails on that real quick, and if they're not already coming in. So that was my quick question. Thank you.
Andy, this will give us the opportunity to put in the toll booths that so many have talked about over the years.
Exactly.
I see Robert Smith had his hand up, and then after that, we'll go to Councilperson Martini.
Yes, Mayor. Thank you. Trey, for the submittal for DRB, will it mirror what was submitted for tonight's workshop? Because the building elevations shown with the final plan for the public hearings, they cannot change significantly.
The architectural elevations, and actually, I don't know if Keith still has the ability to share the actual architectural rendering or the elevation. That's representative of what will be part of the building plans and the look. So it's consistent with what the code is, with the changes in elevation style and all that. I mean, nothing you're seeing here is going to be drastically different when it's constructed. Minor details and input on how that can work. And what we show here, I believe, and architect believes, to generally conform to your standards. So I don't think there would be any substantial change to our elevations moving forward through a full building plan approval.
Okay, because I mean, the question that was posed was, can you make it look more like the character and feel of the town? And I just want to make sure council's aware that if there's no significant changes to DRB, once we hit that public hearing process, there cannot be any significant changes. So what we're seeing right now is pretty much what's going to be submitted to DRB.
Thank you, Robert. That's an important clarification, because while it could potentially be done, if there's not the time to do that, or we need to make a little time to do that, that'll be something we need to discuss.
Well, these elevations, just to be clear, I mean, through our 3 other workshops, there's been several tweaks to them already, with that corner parapet feature being brought down in size, the changes in the frontage. I don't think this elevation is drastically new from anything that's been seen, and we have taken input into it. So, again, my comment would be, I don't see a dynamic shift from what we've shown for the last 3 workshops to this one based on commentary,
So yeah, and listen, I'm not trying to raise alarm bells. I was just saying that, first of all, we want to make sure that we all understand where we are at in the process. So, and then also, by lowering, and maybe you guys did say that you lowered the corner. It does look lower to me now that you say that. But that is good to know, because
we did, Mayor. Yeah. We had a 36-foot maximum, I believe, at the time. It's in the design standards, and we've lowered it quite substantially to bring the scale back down to the city size.
Okay,
and that could be seen. That could be seen because the Ace Hardware building also had the tall tower on the north side that was a little more akin to the architecture building next door, which is now not. So, and with maybe some tweaks to the colors. The architect was handed the standards at the very beginning of this project, Scott Cormier's office. So he's endeavored to make sure that the matter of fact, we changed it quite a bit from the second to the third, or no, first to second workshop, because there were some comments about it not matching the style quite to the extent that we needed to. So it's been now we can still play around with some colors and things like that. But
can you stop it right? Okay, I'm sorry, I did not mean to interrupt you, but you were scrolling. So if you could just stop right there. No, that's it right there. Okay, so if you look, right where your cursor is. Now, see, this is an example of, and I know this is an imperfect process, right? So that's the beauty of having the opportunity to talk about this. When you look at that elevation there, that has a lot more character than some of the other drawings. So that's key, because, and I just want to make sure we don't lose this, because you'll see the roof lines are different heights. The buildings are offset there, if I'm not mistaken. I'm looking at what I believe are some front elevation shifts. Yes. Okay.
There's relief and.
Yes. So those are the things that I want to make sure that we're showing residents so they can get a better feel, because I think what happens is when we look at some of these, and I know that you're showing a different aspect in each drawing. Like, for example, the one below is to show the reference to other buildings that surround it. But you can see that in this particular drawing or rendering, you don't see any of that relief. You don't see all of those roof lines they look repeated. And I think that is where people were, kind of saying, like, I know we gave them design guidelines, but like it looks a bit monotonous. So, we just want to take those opportunities, and also just to confirm with you, we want to make sure, which one is it? Is it the one above it? Because I think people will like that more.
I think to your question, that probably is the correct elevation, because we're required to have that relief in those 20-foot increments, and that shows it the best. The skyway, the view on the next photo was really generated show scale with the building next door to us.
Totally understand. Yep. And I think everyone understands that. It's just a matter of when we're doing this, if we can point those differences out, it's helpful. And we get better with this as we do more, but also that I think is just super important. I want to thank Bill. I want to thank Robert for the clarification. I want to thank Bill for his patience. Councilperson Martina, you're up next. And I also saw Councilperson David. I think she just wanted to say thank you for pointing that out. So, all right, good.
Yes, thank you for pointing that out and clarifying that. And thank you all for your time and efforts on this project. I do have a couple of questions. This is designed assuming a parking ratio of 3.5. Do you have a contingency plan for not getting that ratio of 3.5? In other words, if the buildings have to be scaled down, where is that space going to be removed from? I've had a couple of residents ask me if that is the case, could the building be moved back from the build to line, or maybe part of it to give it even more relief? I don't know if that's been considered or not.
As of where we're at right now, I mean, this project, we've scaled it back to get to where we're at today. We don't have an exercise that would further limit the footprint. You get into I mean, just being honest, you get into a standard of financial viability, and there's a lot of fixed costs that go into a project like this. Every kind of piece matters, so we're trying to strike that balance of practical development applications and ensuring we're keeping character and design and trees and all those pieces and parts in place together. I mean, at one point this was a 2-story building, but I know there were some concerns about the height and scale of that too. So that's all part of it.
All right, thank you. As far as the buffer wall on Oakdale Street and also on 6th Avenue, there's a lot of resident concern about what's going there and how it's going to look and what it's going to mean to them, the impact that they're going to have. And I've been getting a lot of feedback, major concern from residents about that, mainly because it's not really super detailed, because like you said, there's a cost factor in providing that, and reassurances from your group that everything will be fine. But would you guys be willing to meet with those residents, possibly to discuss their questions one-on-one? I think that would go a long way towards resolving some of the questions that they've got.
Yes. And I think that's a great point. And I think this is probably something I should have mentioned in our initial feedback. So once we're through this process and into DRB and then the 2 town council meetings, our intention is a couple of things. We're going to have at least ask to and be available to have one-on-one meetings with each of the town council members to have a really robust dialogue about these things. I know the public forum is great for this. But sometimes it's easier to really get into the weeds in a one-on-one opportunity to cover individual items and then come to the public setting and discuss all that with a little more clarity. So that's going to happen on our behalf. And 2, I would actually tell you, I can't commit to getting a piece of wall out there in each size because they are large, but I would think with fairly easy process, we could at least mock something up that would be a piece of styrofoam or something that's 6 foot, 3 foot, and 4 foot. And Keith, I'm sure, would volunteer himself to hold it out there. And if we want to have a meeting on site with, 10 concerned residents, our office is 20 minutes away. I'm more than happy to do that. So I think it's part of that public hearing process where we're hearing that. And between now and our first meeting in front of you guys for a vote, I would have no qualms in saying we would set a time to do that with the residents.
Okay, good. That's good to know. I had a question for Brad. I think there were some other options for tree mitigation that involved planting. Is that correct, Brad?
Yes, sir. So
rather than swapping trees for parking spaces, can you delve into that very briefly, please?
Well, in terms of in lieu of paying a mitigation fee for trees that are being removed, there is the option where they could provide on an inch-for-inch basis replacement trees to replace what is being removed. So there is an option to either the mitigation fee or an inch for inch replacement.
And I think if we, maybe consider that, especially for the folks on Oakdale Street that are going to have to be looking at the, headlights and glare from not necessarily the parking lot lights, but headlights and that type of thing, that may be a beneficial arrangement to look into a little further. And finally, I had a question about stormwater. Can we talk about stormwater? Is that on the table here? I know there's lots of pages of calculations, and I was just wondering about overflow and, would the system be able to handle the kind of rainfall we had this summer with hurricanes Ian and also Nicole? Or is there some outflow that would be necessary?
Commissioner Martini, I'll give you the short answer and I'll let their engineer give you the long answer.
Okay.
So the short answer is their system is designed to the permit criteria, which does not account for hurricanes and tropical storms and those large storm events. However, that is part of what we've done some preliminary review on, and we did review their model and their documentation. And it does appear they are meeting the criteria, which the criteria is that the flow going off site is not more than pre-develop. Let me back up real quick. Post-development off-site impact of stormwater is not greater than pre-development. So there's not an increase in what happens. From what we've reviewed so far, it appears they're meeting that. So that's my short answer, but I would leave it to Mr. Geiger to give a more specific answer.
Yes, we've actually designed very similar systems to these on a few different projects. The good thing about this site is we have quite a bit of separation from the seasonal high. When designing this project, our main goal was to make sure that we are not exceeding the precondition flow rate as the site stands now, where the site currently generates a little over 2.5 cubic feet per second. And under post conditions, we have to make sure that we don't exceed that. As of now, we are not exceeding that in the 25-year, 72-hour storm event. Along with that, there's also built-in factors of safety, where when we're running this model, we aren't able to run any percolation during these storm events. So we have to assume that this system is not able to drain any water into the ground as the storm happens. So because of the distance that we have from the seasonal high water table and the amount of on-site storage that we have in this system, we're confident that the system will be able to perform during the storm events that we had similar to this year. I was actually on site for a winter spring site that we had very similar to this one. It was a few hours after the storm passed, and there is no standing water on these blocks. So we are confident in how the system will be able to perform here.
Okay, good. Thank you, Marcus. And one last point, on page 51, this shows the town. It appears that the project limits are on the wrong block. Page 50 is incorrect also.
Page 50. Okay, and we can take a look at it and fix that.
So if you could move that project one block north.
Yep, I see.
No,
yeah.
Not that one, the next page. Well, that one too, but the next page down. So those folks are going to be surprised when they get a shopping center.
In their backyard.
Yeah.
Oops.
Absolutely. We'll fix that.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilperson Eagle Eye there. Very good, Martini. All right.
I had to find something, sorry.
Hey, we look until it hurts. I know that I see a couple of folks from the residents. I promise you we will get to the opportunity for all residents to have their input just shortly here. We just want to make sure we go through a couple of these things so I can get council with all their information and have them have the opportunity to ask some of the questions that have also been submitted via resident input as well. Dorothy, I see you there. Dorothy's our town clerk. Dorothy, I know you're going to read a letter, I believe, but do you have something else as well at this point?
No, just the letter when you're ready.
Okay, I don't see any additional town council input. So Dorothy has a letter that has been sent to us by Councilperson Rose, who was unable to attend this evening.
Okay, regarding 500 block PUD, I am unable to attend the February 28th to 2023 workshop for the 500 block PUD design review. So I'd like this note read into the meeting minutes. I have been reviewing the 500 block development plans and scope of work for many years while serving on the DRB, LRP, and as a council member. At each of these reviews, I have stated my position that I will not approve a plan that provides less than 4 parking spaces per 1,000 square feet of development. Yet as of last submittal dated February 8th, 2023, I see the developer is still trying to convince the town that 3.52 spaces per 1,000 should be adequate. For those that are not familiar with typical parking requirements in Orange County, Florida, let me point out that typically. Number 1, restaurants, 1 space for each 4 seats provided for patron use, plus 1 space for each 75 square feet of floor area provided for patron use, which does not contain seats. Number 2, retail, 1 space for each 300 square feet of gross floor area. Number 3, business office, 1 space for each 200 square feet of floor area used for office purposes. Number 4, medical office, 1 space for each employee plus 2 spaces for each employee for their patient use. Note that if not enough parking is provided, the burden is placed on public space and other businesses to handle the overflow. This is not fair to anyone. Based on this information, I believe the Town of Windermere design guidelines has been more than accommodating when requesting only 4 parking spaces per 1,000 square feet of development, and we should not back down from this requirement. I also think that the traffic into town will be significantly increased. In addition, the buildings are sitting too close to the roads, in my opinion, thus making the overall scale of the project feel like it's overwhelming the town center. I understand the project is meeting the current town center design guidelines of these specific architectural requirements, and as a result, I will reluctantly accept the design of these elements. Just to be clear, I'm not opposed to the development within our quaint town of Windermere. As a resident and a town council member, I am only attempting to preserve the small town character and quality which Windermere is famous for. The scale and aesthetics of the proposed architecture is of utmost importance. The traffic, septic system, water, parking implications of the town's infrastructures are also obviously critical issues which affect our town's character. I hope that we as residents of our great little town can all agree that we will do the right thing during this approval process. Thank you, Molly Rose.
Thank you, Clerk Burkhalter, for reading Molly's very well thought out thoughts into the record and allowing everyone to hear those. All right. I will just double check real quick with council to make sure there's no additional input or comments based on Councilperson Rose's input. And if there is none, we will go ahead and begin with public input and comment this evening.
We're going to restrict it to 3 minutes like we do for
yes,
town meeting. So I'm just getting my stopwatch ready.
Sounds good. All right. So hopefully, I know that everybody's had a lot of opportunity to comment on this. So I think everybody's probably pretty laser focused in. So I think if I'm not incorrect, hopefully I'm being fair here. I believe I saw Stephen Withers put his hand up first, and then I believe Jennifer after that.
Yes, sir. One comment I did want to make was that one of the concerns that we had from Oakdale was the screening with vegetation along Oakdale. We did talk to the tree board on Friday morning, and I believe the tree board's going to ask that the developer do place enough landscaping to shade the residents on Oakdale from the view of the dumpster in the back of the buildings. And then the town is willing to add additional landscaping along the right of way of Oakdale as well to help shade those areas. So I just want to make sure that was on the call.
Great. Thank you, Robert. All right. If everyone will be sure to give their full name and address, that will make Clerk Burkhalter's job much easier, and we'll have your information for the record. Stephen, go ahead, sir.
Stephen Withers, 712 Main Street. After the January meeting, I sent a letter and sent it to Dorothy, and she said she couldn't add it to the minutes, but it had about 10 points that I think are still valid. Did anybody get that email? First question.
I believe we did, sir.
Okay, good, because most of my points are still valid, I think, in a sense. My concern is that most people will be approaching this project from the parking lot, and the back facades of these buildings look like the back of a shopping center. They don't look like that's the main approach. So yeah, that. One of the comments I made was certainly you could break that wall up with change in color. Or siding. I think siding would be cheaper than stucco, you know, like the siding we use in the town hall. The other comment, if you go back to that perspective this time, I just got back in last night to stop right there and lower it down just slightly so I can see the top of the wall back in the back. You can move it down. In the back, you can see a black car and a silver car right next to a green space with nothing in it. No, where you over to the right there. You know, that would provide 2 parking places. And I think if we planted some fig vine or something along that wall, it'll give it a lot better impression than just putting a green thing between cars. We just need to look at every opportunity to make that parking entrance into these buildings as nice as what's trying to be done on the front side. That's my comment in addition to the ones you got earlier. Thank you.
Hey, Stephen, thank you, sir. And I do believe I'm going to take a wild guess here, and there's probably not just empty green space there, because I know that we would take those 2 parking spots in 2 seconds. So I'm going to guess that's not an exact approximation of a rendering there for the parking.
Well, I mean, those 2 parking spaces, if they were moved just south slightly, you could save one of those big heritage trees. So there may be something civilly under the ground that I don't know about, but I'm looking at that rendering and saying, I prefer to see some greenery along the wall than that big greenery separating cars.
I totally agree. Hey, Brad, let me ask you just a quick question. There's no low-hanging fruit like that in the parking design, is there?
No, that's how I was looking right now at their site plan.
There is. That is in the site plan. I looked at it earlier. For that to be a little green space.
I couldn't tell what it'd be for, except
yeah, I mean, you know, certainly. As we go through, we'll, you know, maybe someone from the applicant side can check on that, as well as we're working through public input here, and we can check back. Thank you, Stephen. That's a great find. I hope that's the case.
Yeah, I believe that's where their septic is in that area.
This is a Trey Vic. The one thing I will say is I can assure you, if we can accommodate your parking standards and code and find more parking, we would build it.
Okay.
I would just be mindful that with the rendering and the tree saving, there could be a tree there. I don't know exactly the detail, but that's part of DRB and going through those finite and technical reviews. We will maximize as many parking spots as we can and accomplish what everyone wants to with the trees.
Yeah, I was just assuming that, but certainly, hey, you know, a couple extra set of eyes never hurt a thing. Thank you, guys.
We'll take it.
Jennifer, good evening. I think you're on mute.
And Mayor, just so the applicant knows that Stephen Withers and both Jennifer Roper sit on the DRB, so they cannot tell us how they would vote, but maybe some of their concerns.
Thank you, Robert, for that clarification.
Thank you. The parking material that's being used, I saw in the renderings, is that crosshatch concrete with the drainage through it. This project I've been excited about because I thought it would be very pleasant and a real joy to go to. I'm looking at that parking surface. It seems that that would be hazardous for elderly people getting in and out of their cars. That type of drainage makes me feel like we're trying to push so much building into this spot that we're trying to make the parking fit it. So I'm really, I know there's other impervious materials that are available that maybe wouldn't be dangerous to walk on, because that with that granular inside the holes of the concrete, I think would possibly wash down or be not level and could be dangerous. Another thing is when we went through this 23 years ago, if y'all can believe that, with the design guidelines, we talked a lot about that. Also, the pleasure and the joy of going to this place, and 10-foot parking places is, I thought, what we had all agreed to. I can't find it in my guidelines right now. I see a 10-foot buffer for parking, but I think that's on the sides. But 8 or 9 foot parking spots are very tight when you're getting in and out of them. It's not a pleasant experience. Another thing that I've noticed on the 6th Avenue side, having the storefronts coming out there, whether it's the same store that's on Main or not, we didn't discuss that in our guidelines that I ever remember that I can see that we would ever have storefronts there on the front, on the 6th Avenue side. I always picture that to be buffered. And as it is now, it is broken up with some windows, but it just is one long solid building the way I see it. Another thing was, I was so disappointed when I saw the drawings, and I know you've worked very hard on them. The front, the facade with all those roof peaks, nothing against the Ready Market, but it looks like the Ready Market. And hopefully that building may be gone someday. And our facades were supposed to be basically perpendicular from the ground in a straight facade that went up. That
3 minutes.
Balconies, it could have some architectural details. So I hope this rendering will be changed a lot. I guess my time's up. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. Appreciate that.
Mayor, can I just address one quick thing just to maybe help
yes,
provide
Trey.
some color on the paver piece? Susan, to give you a little comfort, you're seeing that cross. I know exactly what you're describing, that crosshatch concrete. That's what we're going to use here is a pervious paver, which is not that. It'll look like a brick paver, and we'd be happy to connect with you and could show you projects around town that have it.
I'm aware of that, and I think that would be a great decision, and to not use.
That's what it's going to be. This is another example of, renderings are focused on a specific item, and that was probably something that just didn't reflect well in that rendering. But it will be a paver system. It'll look a lot like your brick streets and the pavers you see out in your
and this is very important that in page 1 of our introduction it says that this design guideline should be to keep stores from looking like copies of the shopping malls or national chain establishments. And this actually does look like what's up the street from us. It's not unique. It doesn't look old fashioned. No offense. but this is not uniquely designed. I think that y'all could do much better and do something unique and not something that's already built somewhere else and just changed to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. We're going to go to Tom Stroop.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me okay?
We can, Tom.
Yes, sir.
It definitely feels like they're just trying to squeeze as much as they possibly can out. And from an owner's perspective, I totally respect that. I know that John's talked about in the past that the owners have a right to develop their property, and I totally agree with that. But it really feels like we're compromising some of our, right now, the biggest problem in downtown, I live in downtown, I know personally, is parking. This is going to force more parking into the outskirts. I would like to see, I know it's a big deal, maybe it could be just a quick overdraft, if that's possible, of just maybe what it would look like to put 4 parking spots in. Don't go into all the landscaping and everything, but it just really feels like that 3.5 is not going to be nearly enough, especially if one of them is a restaurant. And it's very possible it could be, and I would go eat there. So I would love to see that. I think Bill was kind of hinting at that too. See what it looks like with 4 spots. I know that they want 20,000 square feet, and I can appreciate that as a developer. But the reality is it's still going to encroach on our neighborhood quite a bit. Still not in favor of the paving. Everybody knows how I feel about that, but I'm not going to argue that point. And the footprint, and Brad and I talked about this last meeting. He mentioned the footprint wasn't that much bigger. And I can appreciate that perspective, but it's not really what the footprint is, it's the impact. Right now, there's very little impact from any of those businesses down there. This is going to greatly impact the traffic and the noise in that community. So it's not the footprint, it's the impact. I will frequent these shops. I'm not poo-pooing the whole idea, but I really would like to see what it looked like with 4 spaces. And truth be known, and I think we all know this, 4 is not even going to be enough. So that's my input into that. And maybe town council could request something. And don't beat them up over it. Just see what it would look like with an overlay of some sort. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Appreciate all your input as well. Let's see. I'm trying to remember the order which everybody, I believe Renea Atta was next.
Hi, I'm Rania. I live on 323 East 8th Avenue, and I'm also the owner of Pistol Home and Garden in downtown Windermere, 503 Main Street. I have a few concerns. I think it's wonderful to develop and to have more growth in our town, and I'm excited about it. The things that I'm concerned about is parking. We definitely have an issue as a small business in the town of Windermere. We struggle with parking where customers are like, we tried to come in today to see you and we had no place to park. So I feel like we please, reconsider this. We need to have all of the parking spaces, no exceptions, because it's going to affect all of the businesses and the traffic, coming into the town, and just going to hurt a lot of the existing businesses at this point if we do not have our parking spaces. Another thing that I wanted to ask about is I see the shopping center, but I don't see our stores and the businesses of what it looks like. When I saw this drawing, and no offense to anyone, but I immediately thought of 1, it looks like a shopping center. 2, it looks like the fresh market up the street. It does not lie in line with the charm of the town of Windermere. I feel like we're going away from that. It does not incorporate all the other stores that are there already, which I'm a little disappointed in not seeing. Another thing is I'm really concerned about with the semis. I've actually taken a lot of pictures of semi trucks coming in. They're going over the roundabouts. How is the whole delivery going to happen? How many deliveries is the Ace Hardware going to have per week? And semis coming in and out of the town. I have lots of pictures of already, semis coming through and the difficulties that that's imposing. Like for me as a small business, I do not allow deliveries with the semis. I do box trucks. I won't accept any deliveries that come through a semi. So I'm just a little concerned about that with the traffic and what that's going to be, how impactful that's going to be to all of us. as residents and businesses. Another thing is I know that Brad pointed out the displays, there won't be any displays. Well, if correct me if I'm wrong, and I'd like to get some clarification on that. With Ace Hardware stores, I've seen them leaving out their displays overnight so they can leave their lawnmowers out, their whatever they have to sell for that day. So they have permanent fixturing outside. Is that for sure not going to happen? Because none of us is allowed to do that. And I think that should stay that way because that keeps in line of the charm of our, town. So I think that's everything.
Thank you. Thank you, Rania. And I apologize for mispronouncing your first name there a little bit. I do.
Oh, no.
And also, yes, I just want to clarify for everyone that the guidelines for merchandise will be the same as they are currently. Nothing would change about those. Robert, I saw your hand up. Did you want to interject anything there?
I believe that council does have the opportunity to allow that, but with keeping with the standards, again, that's a town council call. But I did have a question from Susan, if you would allow me.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Many residents expressed disapproval of the building design, but changes have been minimal and remain modern. The town hall was completed in 1924. How is the current design considered to be complementing and in accordance with our town history and culture? That's it.
Okay. I will I think
I believe that's more of a statement than anything else.
Yeah, okay, maybe. I think a statement at this point is better. And I think at the end of the comments, certainly we'll allow the applicant the opportunity to address some of those things and maybe give us any input they have into flexibility. I mean, it's challenging because our charm is unique, right? But some of our charm is beautiful. Some of our charm is just kind of what we've grown used to. It doesn't necessarily always have to be beautiful. I feel for anybody trying to come in and do a really, I don't think it's an easy job. I think we did a pretty darn good job of that with the town facilities. But some folks will still come and say they're a little bland, but they blend in with the building that they replaced, or the buildings that they replaced, I think is what I would say to that. And I think with that, I will go to Joan Foglia, and then Angela Withers, then Daniel Floyd.
Hi, Joan Foglia, 215 Butler Street. I also have two other residents here, Susan Carter and Hannah Amar, who would like to speak. So we'll make it short. I think we all feel the same way. I'm looking at this rendition of what you would like to build, and I don't find anything historic about it. It looks like anything that you would find anywhere in the United States in any town. It just looks like a strip mall. There's nothing historic about it, and I'm very disappointed. And I agree with Jim. I think you guys have the opportunity to be amazing here. I've looked at your website. I've looked at your designs. You've done some really cool stuff, but I don't think this fits with the character of our town. And I'm hoping the next rendition will be amazing. It's very flat. It does look like a warehouse. There's no, what did you call it, Hannah? No staggering or variation of buildings. I work in the film industry, and if a director said, look, we need to build a Western town, or we need to keep, consistent with this town, what it looks like, never would a production designer come up with something that looked like that. Another thing is, we have lots of residents who like to walk up and down the street and shop, and it looks very dangerous how close we are to Main Street. We used to have benches set off to the side where a lot of our favorite elders used to sit and buy ice cream for the kids, and such great memories. I feel like driving around the corner of this side here on 6th and Main is like the sign at, what's the name of that place? Marina Bay, that gets crashed all the time. It just looks very dangerous to me. Another thing is, and I'm sure I will let Susan address that in more detail. There is no room here for any large trees in the front that would fit any ASA standards. And I know we have an arborist on board here, and I hope that person agrees as well.
1 minute.
Okay, I'm done. That's it. I'm hoping the next rendition looks great and we can come together with something amazing.
You got a minute, Joan.
Oh, I'm fine. That's fine. Everyone's saying the same thing. Go ahead, Hannah.
Yeah, my feelings are similar. I just, somebody who's traveled all over the United States and seen thousands of cities and towns for business. You could take this bill. Oh, sorry. I'm Hannah Amar, 315 West 2nd Avenue.
Thank you, Hannah.
You could take this and put it in any city or town in the United States and it would fit right in. It's very generic. It looks like up the street where the Walmart is. So that's my main objection. And also the line of sight. I don't know if it just looks like it sticks out so far right there at the corner of 6th and Main Street. So that's my biggest concern is looking at the rendering, is that it just doesn't have any distinctive quality to it that fits the town of Windermere. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Am I now? Do you have time for me, or do you want me to come back?
Susan, it's fine. Go ahead.
Okay, Susan Carter, 106 Palm Street, Windermere Tree Board. I just have a couple of quick things to say. I am grateful for the extensive tree mitigation notes that do work toward tree protections on this project. I'd like to add a couple of things though. First of all, the rendering is inaccurate. And I'm joking about the ghost trees that I see on there, but even the canopy that is to remain is inaccurately represented on the rendering. That said, I also have a request. I would like to make it public record that we establish an appropriate protocol for our arborist and the site arborist to pursue, just to make sure that all of these tree mitigations are followed appropriately. So that would be a project that I would like to see us work toward as we go toward approval on this development. Again, I will point out that canopy is my priority, and protecting especially the old trees back there still continues to be my priority. So that's it.
Mayor, can I jump in here for a second?
Yeah, thank you, Susan. Go ahead, Bill.
Sorry. As a tree board liaison, I think the impetus for that request is so that we have a proper channel and we know who to talk to, as soon as an issue is identified. Because, trees take 100, 200 years to grow, but seconds to destroy them. So we want to make sure that if there's, we see something that is that needs to be addressed, that we have a direct route to whoever can make decisions about correcting it. Just, for both sides, we have our arborist and arborist on the developer side. And, I expect that they're going to be closer friends than they are now. And, things will go smoothly. So we'll have our system of checks and balances there. And, like I said, in my previous meeting, we're thankful for the number of trees that the developers have cooperated with to save. It's really a huge amount compared to what we started with. And Eric's been on was on our new town facilities project. So he knows our guidelines inside and out. So, I don't really expect any issues, but as far as communication goes, we just want to make sure we have, a direct line in case something comes up.
Get a tree phone, like a bat phone. All right. And you guys will have to forgive me. I can't recall whether I said Angela Withers next or Daniel Floyd. I know one of those two is next.
Well, I'll go. Hi, Daniel Floyd, 515 Oakdale Street. I appreciate the comment about coming on site from the applicant and visiting with the Oakdale residents. But to be honest with you, we've been hearing that since the original HUD was approved almost 2 years ago. So I'd really like to see the applicant come out and visit with the Oakdale residents, especially the ones that'll be directly across from the actual parking lot. So please do come out and visit us. We'd like to talk and meet in person and talk about the landscape buffer and the wall and things of that nature. So second question I have is, the developers and the owners of the property have kind of changed, at least from my understanding. So who's behind this development? I know it was originally the Cars. Are they still involved? I haven't seen them. And this is the first I've heard of V3 Capital, and kind of what's the equity ownership? Who's going to be owning it? Who's developing it? Who's operating it once it's built? If we could get that information. And then lastly is, who are the tenants going to be? I heard a comment, I think it was from you, Mr. Vick, that you could discuss the new tenants or the certain tenants. If you could enlighten us on who they will be, that'll be helpful. Thank you.
All right, if that is all your questions, maybe Trey can answer those.
Sure. Regarding the in-person meeting, I would tell you that I think by the middle of March, I don't see why we can't have a meeting on the calendar to meet out there. And whether I can be there personally, if I can, I certainly will be, but at minimum, you'll have a couple people from our team to be there, and we're fine with doing that. And I think it would go a long way, frankly. So I know you've heard it in the past, but I promise you it'll happen. And I'll find a way to make contact with you or share with you our information so you can do that. And we'll get it set up. Regarding ownership, Jim Carr and Jim Gissy and their families are still the owners of the project, and that has not changed I think they've owned it for 12 years now. So none of that has changed. We've come in to help them get this built and developed. We're real estate partners with them across a lot of different assets. So to that extent, I think that's probably the most detail I could provide, but it has not changed. Just to be clear, we're just helping them through the process. And then tenant wise, we do have Ace Hardware. I know there's been some commentary about Ace, but to be clear, Walter Toole is a longtime Windermere resident, and he is the group behind it. They're the largest operator in town, and frankly, they're really excited about doing a boutique type store here, and there's examples of that within that brand. And again, that's something, if we get this meeting scheduled in person, I can certainly share some options of that to you, and maybe as part of the DRB or probably more likely in the first town council meeting, we could share some more details around that. And then other tenant wise, I mean, some of the existing tenants that are there, we're certainly intending to keep, and they would like to stay there, and that's our goal where we can. And nothing else has been signed in all transparency, but certainly as we get users identified, we're not going to be quiet about them. We'd love to share them with you. I think everybody wants a restaurant. We do as well. We just want to be mindful of how big it is. I think some services that could be useful in that area, that's all that we're targeting. So I think we're pretty in tune with the folks that live in Windermere, and I have a lot of people that are owners of this and users of it that live there too. So we're going to be very mindful, and we'll be transparent as things get to a point where from a business perspective, it's appropriate to share. If we had something signed more than what we have, we would, but we just need to move this project a little further along to be able to sign more. So I hope that helps answer your question.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I do appreciate you offering to come out. You know where to find me.
Thank you, Trey, and thank you, sir. We wanted to make sure, I will say, I want to make sure that I do let everyone know this, that the V3 Capital Group and all the applicant folks, they did want to have an in-person meeting for this workshop. I actually asked for the virtual meeting because, quite frankly, the participation we get on the virtual meetings is 2 to 3 times what we get for an in-person meeting. And I value that input. And we will have the opportunity to have 2 in-person hearings that will be coming up if the project moves past this stage as we discussed tonight. So there will be lots of times for in-person, but they did want to, so I want to give them credit for that. And I know, let me know if we don't get a meeting scheduled soon, we'll make that happen. Angela Withers.
Thank you very much, Jim. I do want to thank Brad for all the effort he put into explaining how some of this has been arrived at, but particularly this concept of the build to line in the design guidelines. My concern there is that what's happened is exactly what you said, is that the designer has built to the lines rather than considering the best design. And so I keep coming back to this corner that we've all addressed. Yes, that elevated corner, I call it a tower, I know that isn't the word. It's not right on the corner because it's giving us the sight lines. It needs to, that whole corner needs to be pulled back a little, whether it's by cutting off the corner, giving a little angle there that would make it unique. But you've got this tall element on the corner right where it is least desirable because we're limiting that view as you come around the corner into the town. And I'm wondering if, this can't still be addressed so that we're not just building to the limits instead of really getting the best possible design out of it. I think the horizontal awnings are an element that are very trendy right now. They're putting them everywhere. It doesn't really fit. I'm all for having some contemporary intermingled with traditional. I really like that. But these are just very generic standard things, these horizontal awnings, and the whole uniformity of the facade as everyone has addressed. So I really would like to see the design addressed where there is some in and out of the facade, some recessed areas, so that it's all not just a flat wall. And I know the drawing above does show that a little bit. It's unfortunate that this rendering doesn't. Can we move up to the drawing above again? That shows there much better because I can tell, and because I can't simultaneously see the actual plans of the buildings, but there definitely needs to be some in and out, not just flat walls. So I think this is it. Let's remember the sight lines coming around that corner. Let's stop it. It absolutely looks like a generic shopping center. Those elevated, I know they've taken out one of the tall elements, but having one on the corner does not help that sense of approaching into the town. So thank you. I appreciate all the effort and thought that's going into it. I really hope that some changes can be made before, as you said, that we go to that next phase. We don't want to be taking what it looks like now to the town council for the public workshops, because I understand that would be unable to change it after that. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Angela. I appreciate that. Next, we'll do Nancy next, iPhone 8, Brandy, and then Nora.
Hi, I'm Nancy Nix. I live at 303 East 8th Avenue in Windermere. I believe I brought this up at the last workshop, but for those of us who are not engineers or architects, I would like to see a rendering that shows the entire block between 5th Avenue and 6th Avenue so that I can see the proposed buildings and the existing buildings, because I just want to see what the block will look like. And also, now that we're having some changes, maybe down 5th Avenue, where it's going to show where the trucks are going to come out. I can't visualize what that's going to look like. And I thought a rendering from there would help a lot of us who are not used to looking at blueprints or that sort of thing, so we could understand what it'll look like. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. iPhone 8.
Oh, I think that might be me, Mayor. This is, is it me?
It is.
Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't see the area where I could put my name, so I apologize for that. This is Gloria Groom, and I live at 416 East 6th Avenue here in Windermere. And my biggest concern is the traffic. And as I said, I live right on East 6th Avenue, and the thought of tractor trailers and semis rumbling up and down East 6th Avenue for the demolition and then the construction is daunting to me. Already we have so many semis that come up and down East 6th Avenue all the time consistently, sometimes 2 and 3 in a row. They're making a tremendous amount of noise. Sometimes the house vibrates. And this construction really concerns me, not only during the demolition and construction period, but after it's already built with the ingress and egress into the parking area. If those patrons are coming in and out of East 6th Avenue, that's going to delay traffic because, as you know, that's where traffic approaches the roundabouts, and it's always slower there. So traffic gets built up and gets behind, and people are angry, and it's just really not a good situation already. And with this new construction and new stores, I'm afraid it will just get more and more dangerous and just be additionally disruptive to our everyday life. It's already hard for me to get in and out of my driveway on East 6th Avenue, so I don't see this making any improvements. I think people forget that 6th Avenue is not only an entrance and exit from Windermere, it's also a residential area, and I don't feel like people remember that there are residential homes along East 6th Avenue. So I think the tendency to dump every bit of traffic onto East 6th Avenue is prevalent, and it's very disturbing to me as a resident of Windermere. So thank you for letting me express my opinions. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you for doing so. We appreciate it, and I appreciate you being iPhone 8. We'll just put you down as that. So.
Thank you.
All right. I believe Nora and then Brandy, right? Did I do that correctly?
It's fine.
So Nora Brophy, 426 Magnolia Street. And I have a question about the 5th Avenue entrance and exit. Is that going to be two-way traffic going in and out on 5th, or is it just one way?
We would have to address all your questions at once. It's easier for the 3-minute time limit. So if you have questions, we can go through the line.
Because if it's my concern is that, I mean, the traffic is going to be horrendous anyway, but I think having two-way traffic on 5th is going to make it much worse. And I agree with everyone about the strip mall. And, you know, it's going to be our town's 100th anniversary in 2025. And it would be really nice to have a building that lent itself to a 100-year-old town. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Nora. Appreciate that. And we'll get the answer to that question as well. Brandy's up next.
Yeah. So the first thing I want to start with is that I do think that we need to hold them to the 4 parking spots per the 1,000 feet. I don't see any reason we need to be giving leniency or a waiver in that situation. I mean, even when you look at our own variance code for a resident, it actually says one of the important things to be considered is that you are not to be considered in review for a variance application is that the implementation of these regulations would pose an economic hardship on the cost of building or redevelopment project. I cannot tell you how many variance requests have come to council or otherwise. And when they use well, it would be cost prohibitive to do that, we strike it down. So they shouldn't get any more leniency than the average resident would get for what they want to build. Saying that there's a lot of costs involved in reducing the size of their building, you know, that's a cost prohibitive kind of thing that they're saying. And I don't even think that should come into consideration. If our residents are expected to uphold that, they should have to too. We've already got, you know, based on what Molly Rose said, very, very low limit for the amount of parking that's needed per 1,000 square feet. Our town deals with so much traffic and so much parking, and it's already a cluster. I also agree with Nora, the two-way parking I'm envisioning, you know, I know there's plans for the propane tank for Ace Hardware to have there. You're going to have a propane tank coming in and having to top off their propane. That's going to be sitting there for a while. You're going to have trucks doing deliveries. And I guess it depends on the time, but two-way traffic seems like just an accident waiting to happen. My other concern is that the last I remember talking with Brad Cornelius when they had the documents up for Wade Trim website for the last workshop, was that the maximum peak of these buildings for the towers, which I'm going to call them towers because that's what they look like, was 26 foot, and that the ridge line of the actual roof
1 minute
24 foot. And I believe I heard something about 30 feet tonight. The average one-story structure in the United States is 14 feet. And I want people to remember that, because we can call this a one-story structure all day long, but if you make 36-foot ceilings or 36-foot roof line, 35, I know this guideline is 35, but 31 feet with, 20-foot ceilings inside, that's not really a one-story by most people's definition. So let's not forget the scale. I'm also curious in the one rendering what the difference in the height of this is showing versus the red brick structure that's two-story to the left of it, if we know the actual height. And in terms of the trees, I do appreciate what they're saving. But, saying we're saving trees that are on the perimeter of the right-of-way, that doesn't really count to me. That's not their trees to touch anyway. But I would like to know, I think I heard something about trees in the right-of-way that are being taken down, and I just don't remember that. So maybe I misunderstood that at tonight's meeting. So that's basically it, other than I just stressed that the council hold them to that 4 parking spot, and answer the question about the height.
Thank you, Brandy. Appreciate that. Susan, Susan, you have your hand up?
Mayor, this is the Susan, I think, that proposed the question in the chat box. So I would probably request 2 minutes just to be fair.
Yes, I do. That the lady's suggestion about recessing that corner is really good. I'm not an architect, but I was looking at the front of our town hall, and if we replicated something like that on that corner, that would begin to bring the history into it. But that was seriously a question for the architect, because town hall was built in 1924. While the police department may not be a 1924 building, at least it's not something that sticks out as being very different. So my question is, what pieces of these buildings that we're looking at in the renderings are something that are actually, looking historical and trying to complement us? Because I continue to hear people talk about the architecture. So could one of the architects please address what their thoughts are?
Thank you, Susan. We will we can discuss that. I think that so part of this overall conversation is we have design standards that are in effect for this space that I believe are not actually in effect for the town hall space or the town facility space. So those architectural principles are different, right? Am I incorrect in that, Brad?
Mayor, before we proceed, could we have Susan say her full name and her address?
Yes, please. Yeah, otherwise, we'll never have you for the record, Susan.
I'm sorry, it's Susan Razor, and I'm at 2548 Tryon Place.
Great. Thank you, Susan. Appreciate that. All right. Brad, is that accurate?
You're correct, Mayor. The town facilities are not within this district, but I do want to say in the preliminary development plan process that this project did go through.
What's that?
The applicants at that time did represent, they would use the new town facilities as to help them guide them in the design of their buildings. So that is part of the record of that approval.
Thank you, Brad. I did not recall that. I appreciate everybody with all the input. That gives us a lot of fodder for conversation. So, I mean, I think that the obviously the feedback is there. I think we have 1 or 2 more folks who do want to comment.
Can Brad clarify on that? Were you saying then that the most recent facilities that we built, that they were going to be using that to incorporate their design? Is that what I understood you to say?
Susan, go ahead, Brad.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Yeah, right, correct. The new town facilities, it was to be used to, I would say, inform, not that it would copy it and be it, but it would be compliant and consistent with that, as well as the brewery building. Those both were pointed out and part of the record for that approval.
And the brewery, Brad, does utilize the downtown master plan design guidelines, yes?
That is correct. Yes, sir. They did design that consistent with the guidelines. Yes, sir.
Good. I clarify those. I want to clarify all of those points so everyone is on the same page and understands, you know, what is, what isn't. We don't have a primer right now, but if you go on to the town website, you can find all of the downtown master plan guidelines, and it's probably an interesting read for a lot of people that are you know, making comment in terms of the design, because some of this, of course, is the architect. Some of this could be our design standard guidelines as well. So I want to make sure that we do appreciate that. But you know, I think the input is very consistent. That we'd like it to look, that we'd like it to blend in a little bit more. That we'd like it to be maybe a bit more traditional and to have a bit more diversity. I think that is quite. And something with the corner there, I thought, you know, I did see a building that had kind of a rounded corner with glass that I thought, man, that would fit right on our corner. So anyways, you know, we can provide that input back to the developer and see what we can do there. There is one other person that has their hand up for public comment. We will hear from that individual and then we will close public comment. But it is a P2767576. If you'll make sure you give us your name and address so we can have you in the record.
Hi, this is Kit Arunical, and we are residents on 535 Oakdale Street. So we are directly across from that lot that is going to be the parking lot. You'll have to excuse my voice because I have a cold right now. I think many of the concerns that the residents have spoke of, I do echo those concerns, particularly, you know, the traffic, especially when it comes to construction. I mean, what's going to happen when they do the construction? Are we going to have big semis and trucks along Oakdale? I mean, our driveway is directly across from that property. So I do have concerns on, you know, how that's going to work. In addition, parking is definitely an issue. I echo what I believe Brandy and Nora and others have mentioned about the 4 parking spaces. It doesn't seem like it's going to be enough. And I worry that people coming in are going to try to find parking along the roads. With us being directly behind the lot, I do have concerns that cars are going to park on the side of the street. And I politely request if we could do something to indicate that there isn't shopping parking allowed directly across from our house. And that is all my comments.
Thank you very much for those comments and input, and your voice was fine. I'm sorry that you're not feeling well today. Hopefully it'll be better soon. All right, I think the 2 questions that we had left on the table real quick were the 5th Avenue in and out, and then the corner, the amended corner height.
Yeah, Mayor, I think the max, I'm sorry, I'll leave it to Trey, but I know one of the questions was as far as what is the, I don't know if it's the land development code requires as far as a max building height. I believe it is 35 feet. Brad, you can, you're muted, Brad.
Yes, that's correct, Robert. The maximum height is 35 feet. For any structure within the, actually any structure within the town of Windermere is 35 feet.
Okay. Trey, I think you were in the middle of an answer.
Just going to address the 5th Avenue. It is 2-way, and I believe it is 2-way now. And I think there's we don't actually own all the way to the corner. I think would be another point. So that would be a change to a lot of other folks' real estate than just ours. I think the other thing on the building height is our building height's 26 feet. So I think originally we were pushing to the max 30 2 feet or wherever we were getting close, but we did drop it down to 26 feet just to address it. And that made us, I don't know the exact amount of feet less, but it made us shorter than the 2-story square brick building we're next to.
Next door, right? Okay. Yeah. All right.
And Mayor, what I'm showing here is the properties that are not owned by the developer.
Correct. Yeah, and that is another piece to this, right? So there's the back area is owned. So the part that is adjacent to Oakdale is owned by this property owner that we're speaking about tonight. And then there are, I believe, 1 or 2 other property, or maybe 3 property owners for the other corner there where Robert's moving his cursor and over to the 2-story, what we affectionately kind of call the Margaritaville building. So just for scale and scope for everyone. All right, so I think we've gotten most of the questions answered. So with that, I'm going to close public comment, and then and we've disabled the chat box as well. And that's just so we just don't get a back and forth where people are typing in answers that may not be the correct answer. So we want to make sure that we do everything in the sunshine and that we have all the opportunities to make sure we have the correct answers. At this point, I'm going to open it back up to Town Council for discussion on any of their final thoughts, and as well as probably where they sit in terms of so the applicant can go to DRB at any time, but I think that certainly if council feels that it's appropriate to send them there. The other thing I did not hear was I wanted to make sure, and this is part of the next stage, but are we or are we not in sync on with the tree board and the current plan that we have? I know the plan's an improvement from what we had previously, but I think just for my purposes, I'd like to know if we're synced up there, and if everything is where folks feel it can, the best it can possibly be. Council? Councilperson Davitt.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I think the big 3 issues that I'm hearing from public comment and also from myself is that the issue with parking is already at a premium in downtown Windermere. We need to protect that. So I think we need to protect the 4 parking spaces per 1,000 square feet. In addition, I think the proximity to 6th Street and Main Street at that corner is a concern. I think we need to address that and pull that back. That will also allow us for potential upgrades to the circle when that happens. And then the roof lights, I do agree, those look like castle turrets. That's not exactly the look we're going for in downtown Windermere. So, those are the 3 big items that I think we need to address prior to the applicant going forward to DRB.
Thank you, Councilperson Davitt. Councilperson David.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'm going to piggyback on Councilperson Davitt's comments because they're all with mine. That was why I asked the question about can we change the facade of the building once, because if we have to stick within the parameters that go to DRB, then I have a problem with how this looks. If it looks like the other one, a little more like that, it looks a little more the look and feel of the town, but it's still not quite there. So that's why, I was asking about the facade. Second of all, the parking. We already, trying to get downtown, even for my classes on Friday, I park in the admin building because farmers market, which I love, there's no parking. I can't park to, even enjoy farmers market before class. I have to park in admin. So I just think that if we don't hold them to the 4 spaces, I think there's some low hanging fruit. If we can find some extra parking where we can at least allow maybe some golf cart parking, that maybe one car could fit there if there isn't golf carts, something to where we can have more parking because we need more parking. And so those are my 2 main things. The corner bothers me a lot. I like the window look that Mayor mentioned. If we could do something in that corner, I feel like it's going to be a hazard coming into town. Somebody's gonna I think that's an accident waiting to happen because you can't see around it. But those are my 2 cents. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Robert, I see you have your hand up, sir.
Yes, sir. I'm not sure if this was addressed by Brad or not. But if it is required of them to adhere to the 4 parking spots per 1,000 feet, then there'd be a possible argument. I don't want to make arguments for the developer that they've made every reasonable effort to accommodate with the tree board, with the saving of trees. And if they're going to have to accommodate the 4 spots per 1,000 feet, then we get into that gray area of, can they just take the trees down, or, you know, do they just pay the mitigation? And I think Brad and I talked about that today, and maybe Heather can clarify that a little bit. But if we require them to adhere to that, then we might get into that little gray area that, you know, they made every reasonable effort, but, you know, where's the compromise there?
Heather serves as counsel for the town of Windermere. For those of you who are not aware of that, Heather, can you comment on that a bit?
I would like to actually review the code provisions a little bit closer, Mayor, and talk a little bit more with Robert about that before I do comment on it. I don't have the code right in front of me about the tree provisions.
Understood. I think that, so I think this concern comes about with some of the, you know, the very favorable development language that you're seeing out of Tallahassee. So, and the not so favorable development to tree ordinances. So I think that that gives us a little bit of pause. But you know, I agree, Heather. If you can do that and work with Town Manager Smith to see where, what, and how that may impact. Councilperson Martini.
Thank you, Mayor. And while Heather's reviewing the code, we should have Stephen review the plan, see if he can find any more parking spaces.
Yeah, for sure.
I think the developer, if indeed there are 2 spaces there that were not accounted for or found, it's found money. So maybe they need to think out the box a little bit more. Not only on the parking, I do agree we need the most parking available. But I do agree that, we're in a compromise situation because, we have saved a lot of trees that were slated for removal. And, I think they've done a good job in meeting us, not quite in the middle, but, as much as possible on that site. However, I'm all for as many parking spaces as possible. Like Mandy said, maybe some golf cart parking, or maybe there's a ability to do a space for compact vehicles only, like I've seen in parking garages, or as Tony mentioned, the loading zone, that has to be specific. That takes up a lot of room that maybe could be used for parking. There might be some other thinking outside the box solutions that they can find additional spaces to complement the ones that are already there. And also, as far as thinking out the box, they need to, I think, look a little harder at the style, the character. What I'm looking at on the screen reminds me of, I got to go to the bank tomorrow. Got to go to SunTrust. That's the feeling I get by looking at that. And that's not our town. Our town, it wouldn't take much to spice this up a little bit, throw in some Windermere vernacular and make it a little more variety, as you stated, so that it's more in keeping with the character of the town. This is a 100-year project. So let's make it look like it's been here 100 years, if it's going to last 100 years, and make it fit. So
and Mayor, maybe can I just mention one more thing? And I know Brad's probably mentioned this before, but the PUD zoning and the development agreement that's going to be existing between the town and the developer, that's a negotiated document. So, the town's going to give a little bit, the developer's going to give. So when you have to look at your code in black and white, sometimes you have to deviate a little bit to make the project work for the town. So in the end, it's a negotiated instrument. that's going to have to work for all the parties.
Right. Thank you, Heather. And that's a good point. And it actually reminded me of something that I wanted to clarify from Brandy's comments, that what we're doing here tonight is not the same as a variance request. It is a negotiated instrument to help get us to where we need to be to do the best for everybody involved. So I do appreciate that clarification, Heather. And Councilperson Martini and Councilperson Davitt did make me think of something that also piggybacks on another resident's input that lived on 6th Avenue. And I apologize for not remembering your first name, but you know, maybe there are some opportunities to make a loading zone that is dual purpose, that could be that could be a loading zone for a particular part of the day, which will help to lessen that traffic, lessen those semi-truck deliveries, and make those as efficient as possible, and allow us to find some extra parking during the peak portions of the days, the weekends, event times, those sort of opportunities. So, you know, we may need to get super creative to try to get us to those 4 spaces. So, all right. Any additional comments from Town Council? All right. So, by the amount of comments, it helps to let us know that we're getting closer, we're getting more refined. I do agree that we are hearing 3 constant themes, and they're consistent. And I think that any work that can be done in those directions is going to be a big positive step in terms of the potential for the development.
Mayor, can I make a comment?
Well, hang on. Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I saw Trey. Was that you? I saw Trey. Did you
Yes,
light
sir.
up?
Yes.
Okay, Trey.
Yeah.
Absolutely, sir.
I think, well, and maybe I'm out of turn, so maybe I'll be quiet and let you guys finish rolling through. I just wanted to make sure I had an opportunity to chat before we kind of draw the conclusion. So if there's still more that y'all want to address, I certainly will give the space, but I just wanted to have a few comments if it's appropriate now.
I don't see Town Council with any hands up at this point. I think they've been pretty clear. So Trey, absolutely. I do think it is appropriate for you to go ahead and provide us any input, and you know, that especially on the items that we have kind of centered on and discussed tonight. I mean, we're getting close.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with all the comments. And I think the premise of the workshops as they were built into the PUD was exactly what they've now accomplished. I mean, the goal was to establish what is a robust dialogue in the public forum that's easily accessible for all to understand what the town wants to see and what council wants to see, and what they're indicating they will and will not be able to support. And I feel as the developer here, we have our arms around the fact that we've got to address parking. I think we've heard that loud and clear. Certainly, you know, integrating golf cart parking and some alternatives to maybe shrinking some islands and some things. I think we can lay all that out without an issue. But then I know the elevations, I'm hearing you loud and clear, you know, on that. I think there are some adaptations that aren't, you know, throwing this whole thing out. I think that some of the challenges you keep hearing people reference in that elevation, it looks good, and in this elevation, it doesn't look good. And I think some of that is the unfortunate translation of elevations and not, you know, true building plans. But I do think we can address that. You know, in terms of traffic and things like that, some of that is just a byproduct of you know, the town and its road network that we can adjust. But I guess what I would just want to summarize all that to say is, you know, the process here, and Brad laid it out, is these town workshops gathered that data. I do not think that there is more data to be had. I think we've heard the opinions and the feedback, which is important. But I want to be careful, because every time there's one person's comment that says this thing should be X, and then another one person says it should be Y, the public forum gets to be really difficult to make those really finite tweaks. And I think what I would ask council is we would like to exit this workshop format, go to DRB. What will go to DRB will be something that addresses all these concerns that we gathered, which I think was the premise and the idea of the workshop.
Agreed.
And that way at DRB, it's a public setting. You can review the tweaks and changes. There can be a vote on what that is, and then that transmits on to the project. I just want to be careful that we sit in a bit of a circular reference when I do believe we've heard and have some things we can do to our plan that are impactful and can go to DRB, and DRB can tell us that addressed those concerns or didn't. I think that's my 2 cents from the development side. I think we've tried to run through this process and gather what we can. And before we go to DRB, I'm comfortable saying that we will meet with the residents on 6 that we talked about for the wall height, and we'll do those meetings. But I just don't know if continuing through this, virtual workshop process will gather more data than what we can just get from those very succinct points that we've already heard, and then implement those into what we present to DRB for a vote. That's what I would like us to be able to do.
So I will agree with you at this point that is most likely an accurate summation. So the workshops are twofold, right? It's everyone has to get to the same place. Not everyone gets there the exact same way, but we want to make sure that there's the maximization of input. And then, also if you hear similar things repeatedly, then those are things that we definitely want to hit and touch. And some things are just little tweaks that we were able to, tweak, or you're able to tweak along the way. But, obviously the 3 overarching concerns, I think you hit them spot on. I personally, I would have, if you guys feel that you hear those and are able to address those sufficiently within the parameters of the PUD and all those guidelines, and make something that is going to make DRB happy to recommend, that would be fine from my perspective. But I just what I would urge is that you guys hear those things and hear them and do everything within your scope that you can do to have a good project, something that works for you guys financially, but works for the town long haul, and helps us have a project that everybody can be proud of, and as much parking as humanly possible. And you guys have done a lot of work on the trees, and we appreciate that as well. So with that, I see Tony David's hands up. Councilperson David.
Yeah, just quick question, Mayor. So after the PUD is approved and they go to DRB, what is the opportunity, or what are the steps for council's approval as we go through this process? Is it a plan review as we go through the development, or what is that? I'm not sure if Brad's the appropriate one to answer that, or if Robert is.
So Brad's really good at answering that. I think I can even get to that now, but we'll let Brad do it. He does a fine job at it.
You can do it also. Councilmember David.
Lay that out for everybody.
Yes, sir. So Councilmember David, just so everything is clear, the planned unit development zoning was already approved by the town council in 2021. So the PUD approval for a preliminary plan was already approved. So the process that they're in now is for the final development plan and their final construction plan for them to then move forward to construction. So what happens next, if the next step is now going to the development review board, as we still have to go through the full technical review on the staff side, and also working up the development agreement, as Ms. Ramos said, we're putting that all together. So there's still a lot of work to happen. Once that is completed, then we notice for the public hearing with the development review board. And at that point, that will be the final construction plan that'll be coming through the public hearing. DRB will do their hearing, do their recommendation, which will then come to you at town council for your 2 public hearings with that final 100% construction plan. And if it's approved, then the permit can be issued for them to beginning development. So we're at that last step of that process, basically.
And Brad, just to be clear, I think that there, and to make it clear to council, there is, you know, so first of all, council's, they're not locked into approving that plan. They have three options, right? So it can be approved, denied, or it can be approved conditionally. So there are, you know, obviously you're not going to be redesigning architecture by that point, but you know, if there's something that's like, no way, this does not work, you know, you have those options, or you can conditionally approve it with those conditions that council makes note of, as well as 2 additional inputs for public hearings as well. But am I wrong to say though that the developer now has their work in front of them to do before they get to DRB, even though they're headed to DRB next? That's their next step, but they have a lot of work to do between here and there, right?
That is correct, sir. They have to finish out the development plans, and so we have to work on the development agreement. So there's a lot of work left to do before we can get to DRB. Yes, sir.
Awesome. Thanks, Brad. Thanks, Mayor.
Thanks. We appreciate it, Tony. It's a great question. You know, I mean, I think that this is the way that where the rubber meets the road, right? I mean, so if we're able to have them, the developers work within the input and guidelines and perspective that's been offered tonight, then they can show us that they hear that and put something in front of DRB that, you know, I think that DRB and the council is pretty similar in thinking. So they can put something in front of them that makes them feel comfortable. It'll certainly have a much better shot at the council level when we get there. Any further comment for the good of the order? All right. I personally, from a personal perspective, I want to thank everybody for participating. Again, I don't think you're going to find this type of opportunity for input, and the developers are probably happy about that. That, you know, when you do something in Windermere, it is a little different, but you know, it's a special place for us, and we want to make sure that it's something that's going to work for everybody for the long haul. And I know most of these folks have been on each and every call, so I appreciate all of the input. But also what lets me know that we're getting closer is I think we started with like 90 people on the call. We're down to 36 now. That lets me know that we're ticking off the boxes, and there's a method to the madness. So appreciate everybody. Robert or staff, is there anything that you guys need to add before we close out here?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Thank you all. You have all the direction you need then.
Yes, sir.
Sir.
Council, any last minute concerns or comments? All right. With that, we will adjourn at 8:26 p.m. Again, I thank everyone for their participation.